All right, so we're here with Lance, and what have you been up to? First of all, what are you doing here at the big race?
Well, we're trying to watch it, but it's been a little challenging. The weather has not cooperated, and so since I can't, like for example, right now I can't watch it. Nobody can watch it, so I'm texting with George and just trying to get a play-by-play of what's happening, and then once we do see the finish, then we take a little moment and think about it, talk about it amongst ourselves, and then we record it.
So you say you've been watching this, kind of following it. What do you think of the new format that they've taken on in the whole Velorama Festival and incorporating that into part of the cycling race?
Well, we've talked a lot about it. I think it's, I mean, I may not be the right person to ask because I love music, so anything music associated with music I'm going to say is cool. But it's a twist on an old formula that we probably needed a twist, and shorter stages, more intense stages. Yesterday's stage was, in my opinion, super exciting. So far I like it. I think it's a good idea.
Now, do you think it's sustainable? Because obviously in Europe it's a different story, and we're trying here in the U.S. to make this more accessible to the people. We saw you out there with Jimmy Johnson, and we've likened it in the last couple of days a lot to NASCAR, that it's really spectator friendly, and maybe the crit format helps bring people out here and actually get them involved. Do you think that that's the new norm?
I mean, that's the $5 million question, and you can't compare any of these events over the last 40 years in American cycling. You can't compare them to an event like the Tour, because the Tour is 100 years old, and they have history, and they have the entire country, and I mean the whole thing, the GDP depends upon the Tour de France in France. So this is different. I mean, we're trying to, we have in the last 40 years there's been 20 of these. That's maybe not an exact number, but they come and they're around for 2 or 3 years. People get excited and then they go away. A sponsor leaves, or they lose support or whatever. But this is we again on the podcast we talk about it a lot. Just I think it's a good try at generating interest, combining this part of Denver, combining music, combining bike racing, men's and women's racing. I think it's got a shot, and they have good backers. I mean, it's not like they have, a bunch of nobodies back in the race. They have some significant investors.
Now, from the endurance world, as you and I both know, the inclusion and participation is one thing, but cycling is a little bit different. People like to ride their bikes, but getting involved as a pro cyclist is almost maybe a bridge too far. So is an event like this more focused on a spectator aspect and keeping kind of the pro, kind of like a NASCAR, that people love to watch NASCAR, but doesn't mean they're probably going to ever be able to race in NASCAR? Do you think that is part of the issue here with cycling?
I mean, it is. I mean, the weather. Look at here we're talking about spectators. I mean, and the weather has such an impact on that. You never would think that the weather would take the race off TV, but it has. But if the weather's that bad, then people aren't going to stand on the side of the road either. So but we can't control that. And the comparison to NASCAR, I think, is a good one, because I'm a fan of NASCAR. Jimmy's a great friend of mine. But I wouldn't want to get to a point where we keep, like the new format in NASCAR with the different periods and overtimes and points, and it's like at some point you got to just race. And so I wouldn't want cycling to get to the point where we tried too hard. I mean, I like what we're seeing here, but I wouldn't get too cute.
Now, do you think maybe an ambassador of sorts, kind of like you are for the sport, do you think there's the next one out there, or someone else who could maybe rally the troops?
That's the quickest way to get 1 million people here. I mean, if we had an American win the Tour de France that was in this race, you'd have 1 million people.
Do you think there's anybody out there that could be that person next?
We talked about this yesterday. I mean, you saw this ride by TJ, and it's so easy to say, oh, there he is. There's the future. There's the great white hope. And that's not fair to him. That's not fair to us. And you just never know. And so I try to stop short of saying that. I say it's a hell of a ride, courageous ride. Looks like he has a ton of potential. You ask about him. I ask George. You ask people that know him. They say he's a great kid. Little out there, but that's probably a good thing. Channels his inner Taylor Phinney a lot, but the personalities. I mean, you can't have robots, right? You need personalities, and you need people that have had success abroad, and that will bring these events back to the highest level quicker than anything. But we can't snap our fingers and make that happen either.
So did you go to the concert last night? Are you gonna do that tonight?
We went.
Being a big music guy.
I know we went for a little bit, and I'm actually going to go check some of it out tonight. I have a dinner in Boulder, but I'm going to hurry back from that and catch a little Death Cab for Cutie.
This could be something you do in Austin. Huge music scene down there. You could create this same format. Do you think it would work all over the country, or do you think Colorado and having those mountain stages is kind of key?
I mean, I'm a Texan, but I really love this state, and I think that a state like this or a state like California, you need, those type of difficult stages make it. I mean, Texas is relatively flat, and be hard to pull it off there. And it's not dense. The other thing, these events that take place in the Northeast, for example, the old Tour de Trump, old Tour de Pont, it did start as the Tour de Trump, which is amazing to even say out loud. But when you have these races in Pennsylvania and Delaware and in New Jersey and New York, I mean, look at the Somerville Crit in New Jersey. You have tens of thousands of people there because it's an old event and it's so dense you can pull people from all these areas. States like Colorado are a little more, Denver's a big city, but we're not pulling people from Kansas and Nebraska and Wyoming. They have to come from this area.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you coming out and joining in the fun, and maybe we'll see you at Death Cab for Cutie tonight.
That's right. I had Ben Gibbard on my podcast today. It was amazing. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah, what's your podcast?
My weekly podcast.
A little plug?
Oh, a little plug. Yes, yeah. I'm just being a shameless plug here. It's called The Forward. So it's just a conversation every week with people that I find interesting, which he was very interesting today.